on as a new show, so now you know that I'm a little older. We got at our home our first color television set. And on that first color TV set, very first show that I watched was Batman. And the big colors on the costumes, Batman and Robin, the Batmobile, I was completely hooked. And I must tell you that I never wanted to be Batman. I wanted to be Robin because he got to say all those great holies and all those great things. He got to ride in the passenger seat. To me, that was the cool spot in the Batmobile for me, was Robin's seat. We had so much fun at the San Diego Comic-Con that we brought a few of the collectors who was at Comic-Con with us? Pat Evans, Kelly. I would tell you that 2 seconds before we got 800 people in the room, 2 seconds before we're getting ready to introduce the panel, Kelly with my cell phone flashlight was in a dark corner putting the finishing touches on King Tut, which was really awesome. I mean, this guy's gone way above and beyond. So we had a few of them there, but then we thought, let's bring some of the collectors that were not with us in San Diego and do this very historical panel today. So that's who you see assembled in front of you today. Yes? Yes. Okay, so maybe you don't understand. We're on television. This is really BURT Ward, really Donna, really Robert. These are all the real people. Okay. And you're not applauding for me today, you're applauding for a show that almost 53 years later is still airing weekly in the U.S. and around the world. If you watch MeTV, like I do, you see it on the weekends, and I just happen to have every episode of Batman on my box set. So if you don't have the box set, I would say run out, rush out, and get it. And when I push the button on my box, the Batman theme plays, which I think is very cool. All right. Now, how many here have watched Batman before? Yes? Let me hear your applause. How many of you have children who have watched Batman? Applause. Yes? How many have grandchildren that have watched Batman? Yes, grandchildren too, okay? And you have your kids here with you today. So I think one of the things about this show that really has struck me over the years, guys, and please, you have mics, feel free to just chime in because I'm just your moderator. This is your panel today. I think one of the things that, for me, that's really enduring about this show is almost 53 years later, the colors, they're still vivid. The lines they spoke, still real. The direction that the way that Robert Butler directed the episodes of the show makes you want to watch it. And one of the things, Bert shared this with me. Bert, I want you to tell everybody really quickly, before we officially get going with questions, I want you to tell everybody very quickly, when you see the show and you see when they're with the villain and it's tilted, some people don't realize why that the camera angle is tilted.
Yeah, well, at the time, believe it or not, I didn't realize why either. I thought their cameramen or something were drinking, and I couldn't understand why they couldn't keep their camera straight. And I asked about it, and they said, "Oh, we did that on purpose. We angled it on purpose." And I said, "Why? Why would you angle it?" "Because the villains are crooked." And that was the answer. So that was kind of the cameraman's idea of the campy style, which we, of course, played all throughout 120 episodes of camp and fun.
Absolutely. Now today we're pleased to have with us, like I said, a group of dedicated Batman collectors who are keeping this beloved series and its original props, original costumes, original memorabilia, and screen-accurate replica props and costumes preserved for all time. Okay, now before we get into the questions, I don't know if anybody told you we're going to be here about 4 hours today. I'll be leaving after an hour and a half, but y'all can stay as long as you want. Here's some Bat trivia. Now, the generosity of Danelle Dadigan and the Hollywood Museum, we have a gift for someone. You're going to have 3 chances today to win a gift today. And I think the gift is what I'm wearing. You like that shirt? Yeah. So here is the first Bat trivia. If you know the answer, do not yell it out. Raise your hand, and we will call on you. What was the name of Commissioner Gordon's pungent aftershave, and where did it come from? And panelists, you cannot play. Anybody know the answer to that? No? It's so easy. It was Wellington number 4, and it came from Sumatra. You're a back fan, Bert.
I'm getting worried.
Well, I didn't know that either.
Hey, all right. Yes. Wow. That just made my whole life right there. I got news for you.
Roger, that was the same company that made the perfume from Mexico that Joker gave me.
Well, we learned something else today. How's that? Beautiful. I love that. I love that. Okay, my first question goes to Robert Butler, the legendary... Now, by the way, in the 1960s, when networks wanted to do a pilot for a TV series, they didn't have to think about who is the director we're going to ask to direct the pilot. He was known as the go-to guy for a lot of the big network pilots that I think probably went on to be very successful series like Batman, is Mr. Robert Butler. Now, Robert, my question for you is, you directed episodes of Batman in the pilot. What I'm curious about is, what was it like when you get the phone call saying, hey, by the way, we have this new pilot we want you to direct, and it's about these superheroes, and they start telling you about Batman. What went through your mind, and when you got on the set and you saw the costumes and the set, like what was it that went through your mind? Did you think this might be a hit, or did you think this was no way gonna happen?
There's always been something intriguing about Batman. We know that Superman is never really in jeopardy because of his superpowers. But Batman is a normal human being who has to dig his way out of all problems, processes, dangers, whatever.
Right.
So when that title comes along, particularly somebody who read those comic books at the neighborhood drugstore in the late 30s, there's a special aura about the whole damn thing. And that was very much in the conversation that I had for the first time about it when I was contacted.
Wow, that's awesome. Do you like that, guys? You know what I think is great today is maybe behind the scenes, as producers, directors, writers, I think Robert may be the only one that we have with us of that producing, directing team of Batman. I may be wrong about that, but I feel so fortunate he's here today with us. Fortunate that he's here today with us. So please, once again, let him know that you love having him here. Now, Danelle, I just maybe tell the folks here that don't know how this exhibit came to life.
Well, you know, it's really, for me, overwhelming when I start to think about it. Innocently, I had no idea. You came and asked me, what do you think about reuniting the dynamic duo here? In fact, what do you think about Batman? So now I have a confession to make, Bert. Don't be too upset.
Okay.
But as a child, I was frightened of the TV show. I was frightened because these two men, you and Batman, you did things that I couldn't imagine. You climbed sides of buildings, you got in fast cars, you went after villains, and you never got hurt. And I couldn't imagine, because I fell out of a tree real easily. I'd fall down real easily. I'd get hit with a dodgeball, and it hurt real easily. So I was just thrilled by this fact, to be able to have the opportunity to showcase your show, and have all of these collectors join in, because it was an overwhelming experience, and frankly quite daunting, because as many of the collectors will share with you during this symposium panel, that most of these costumes and props no longer existed.
Right.
So it was quite extraordinary when we started contacting everyone. And let me tell you, there is an international community of Batman collectors and fans. Batman and Robin, that's it. That's all you have to say, and everybody is in. So for us, it was just overwhelming. And as we went into it, we realized, oh my goodness, the studio had not saved these items. In fact, they actually had destroyed most of the props and most of the costumes, because of that newfangled polyester invention of a fabric for the early 60s, did not wear well to begin with during the series, that I'm sure you know. And you just looked at it wrong and it started to fade. Or you just looked at it wrong and it started all of a sudden to lose its elasticity. So when we had the opportunity to get an original costume, the Dynamic Duos costumes from Mark Hardiman in Northern California offered to us, this was like we had hit the Holy Grail. I mean, it was extraordinary. But I'll let everyone else talk about that.
Well, actually, when I was trying to think of a way to honor Burt and honor the series and honor Adam, and I called Burt and his wife Tracy, who have this fantastic Gentle Giants rescue, where they rescue big dogs, and they have rescued over 15,500 in the last 24 years. I called him, I said, and I'm going to tell you something. We're looking at a guy that does not take money from his rescue or his dog food. He has it priced so anybody on any income level, if they have a dog and they want to keep them around longer, they can afford to buy the dog food. And I just think that is rare these days and should be celebrated. So thank you for doing that, Burt. Thank you. But when I called Burt and I said, hey, I've got this idea. His wife Tracy, who's probably she's on that genius. She's way above my level. I just tell you that. She's sort of on the genius level, as is Burt. But I said, I have this idea. She goes, no, I want to do a Batusi World Peace Day, which actually will be happening coming up in early 2019. I said, no, I was thinking more like maybe some kind of an exhibit with original, the props from the show, the costumes and the Batmobile. And Burt said, well, I don't know if any of that really is even around anymore. He had one of his original costumes that ended up with Planet Hollywood. So I'm trying to locate in some vault in Florida this Robin costume. So I would at least have Robin at one of the original costumes that Burt wore. And so Burt and Tracy gave their blessing for me to try to do this, and it was overwhelming for me. It was a lot of weekends and late nights and doing my regular work during the day and then doing all this at night on the weekends, lots of meetings. So I came to Danelle because when I said, where are we going to house this exhibit, only one place came to my mind, which was the Hollywood Museum. And I thought, there's nowhere else where this can be, and I just hope and pray that when I say this to Danelle, she won't look at me like I'm nuts. And so when I called her and said, would you, she just said yes. Without even thinking about it, she said yes. So that's why everything is here. That's why the exhibit is here, and it was brought to life because of Danelle Dadigan. Yes? Now, Burt, can you tell us, my first official question to you, can you share with everybody what it felt like to see these items again after so many years?
Well, it's really impressive because, making appearances across the country as I have ever since the series came on, people from certain portions of the country would come up and they had managed to get one item. And of course that was great to even see one item, but for me to come here and see everything here, including not just Batman and Robin costumes, but villains costumes, and the detail with which this was set up. Every one of these collectors, they poured their heart in this, and the people that set it up, and the meticulousness of it. It's really, for me, it was like a complete recreation back to 1966. It was very real, and the footage that they ran, and some of the great lines and the scripts and every aspect of it, and everybody here that contributed. Believe me, to even get these items is a big deal. Every one of these people spent a lot of time and effort and sometimes a lot of money to get these things, and then to somehow get it all put together is really a pretty amazing feat.
Absolutely.
Oh, the red hotline? Should I answer it? Yes, Commissioner. No, Batman's not here. He's really not here, but we miss him in
very, very much, and we love him. And well, if I can, I'll try to come as soon as if possible. Where do I have to go? Oh, Gotham City. All right. Well, let me check on it and see my availability. Call back. Thank you.
Tom Woodruff, our next question is to you. Tom has the Batmobile, and Tom, I know you have a few other items. Yes?
Yeah.
Tell everybody what you have.
You've seen the Bat computer, the monitor. I call it a monitor. I don't know what it was called back in the day.
Burroughs.
The Burroughs. This was actually, this is like post aerodynamic machinery that was always picked up for cheap, by the set decorators. But this piece was something that was so integral to the Batcave, and you've seen it on other TV episodes like Lost in Space and Land of the Giants. But I found an original housing, and I went to a guy that had original plate, and basically everything was copied, like I did with the Batmobile, to make it as completely accurate as possible. So the idea was to have something that looked new and looked functioning, even though I don't know what it ever really did, right? It was just this big machine. You'd ask it a question, what's 2 + 2? And a minute later, it would tell you 4. So that was top-notch stuff.
Thank you, absolutely. Now, Tom, also another question to you. When you see your items and you see the Batmobile in this exhibit, when you first saw it all put together, and on that opening night that we did back on January the 12th, which was the anniversary of the premiere of Batman, what was that feeling like for you when you walked in and you saw basically the Batcave reassembled again?
I wept. I'm just kidding. No, it was great. It was amazing because as a kid growing up, I think TV shows and movies are things that you really acclimate to or end up loving, have more to do than just the material itself. It's where you are at that point in your life. So Batman had a huge impact on me because I saw it when it started at 66. So I was 7 years old, and I was in that lucky range to completely believe everything that was happening in that TV show for what it was, right? For everything that you saw and heard. And then it was seeing it all over again later when you realize there is some really wicked, funny stuff going on, like right under the level of what you're showing. But to see it all come together like that, it was like something that connected with me that I haven't felt since I was a kid.
In fact, when Tom was driving the Batmobile through Hollywood on his way to be delivered here to the museum, there just happened to be, not planned, some media out there, and they started reporting on the fact that the Batmobile was driving down Hollywood Boulevard and headed towards the Hollywood Museum. At that point, I said, oh, I think this actually could be something really spectacular. And I always thought it was going to be really big. Now, Danelle, is this one of the most successful, or how does this rank in terms of exhibits that have been here at the museum, special exhibits?
Well, it's a really interesting question because we get collectors and visitors who have their favorites from all the different genres and decades of filmmaking and television. But I think for television, this is one of the most popular exhibits because Batman has transcended 3 and maybe even 4 generations. And here at the museum, when we have visitors, sometimes we get a dad, his son, and his son's son that come in. So sometimes the grandson comes with a Robin cape on, and he's carrying a little Batman figurine, a doll, and the dad is wearing a Batman t-shirt, and the grandfather, he's just looking and happy to be out with his family and recalling, and sometimes they tell us the story of how, just like you, Roger, they would sit in front of the television and they would watch the original show when it first came on. So it brings back a flood of memories, and we love the fact that it helps people recall a wonderful time in their life and unifies the family. It does quite a bit at once. But I want to get back, if I may, to Tom and the Batmobile, because once this reporter saw it, it went viral. And I started getting phone calls from people that saw it posted on Facebook. And is it really coming to the Hollywood Museum? So that by the time you showed up with your son, David, and your wife, and you drove the Batmobile into the back of the museum, and by the way, the Batmobile, how did it get on the exhibit floor? You drove it right into our freight elevator, and it lifted it right up, and they drove it right out onto the exhibit floor, and you backed it into place. And
The freight elevator deserves to be on the tour. And then with a lot of geometry, right? There were a lot of 36-point turns and to try to get that thing backed in, but we did it once and it fit.
it was phenomenal.
How long did that take?
I think it was like 25 minutes.
Was that the longest 25 minutes of your life?
Longest 25 minutes to move 15 feet.
But we did it.
I'd like to add something. You know, you brought up the Bat computer, and I think that you didn't really give it justice, because you mentioned that, you know, it just sort of was there and used in other projects. Adam and I, as Batman and Robin, used the Bat computer, and the way they had it programmed is that we would type into a computer information, and they had it rigged where it would light up and do all of its things, and then it would eject an answer. They also had inserts of it's kind of like what you would think today in terms of you know, GPS type of stuff, where it would locate certain portions of Gotham City, zoom in to locate, you know, cross streets and where a building was, where the villains were, or something like that. So it really was an integral part. And then also there was a mobile Bat computer in the back of the Batmobile. So there really was multiple Bat computers, but that was actually used in almost every single episode. So it really has special meaning because you have it, and that it was used as an integral part of our show. You can just about watch any of our 120 episodes, and I can almost guarantee you that at some point we were in the Bat Cave trying to use the Bat Analyzer and the Bat Computer. They were all kind of hooked together to come up with an answer as to where these villains' hideouts were.
Robert? I know he had something he wanted to say.
As Burke speaks, I'm reminded of one of the early directorial moments on the set of Batman. Alfred went to the bot phone that lit up and rang and said, "Hello?" Cut, no. The script said, "without pause." And the actor playing the part, whose name I've forgotten,
Alan Napier.
Alan said, "Okay, we'll go again." We did. He picked up the phone and said, "Hello?" Cut. No, Alan. And he said, "Well, show me what you mean." What I meant was what Burt did just then. He knew somebody official was calling, so he said, "Yes, Commissioner." And the line in the script after "without pause" was probably something like, "He's here, I'll get him, sir." But Alan, of course, wanted to say, "Hello, no, I'm fine, what's up?" It was one of the unusual moments in the new script.
Now, was he really British?
Yes.
Yes.
And Bert, tell everybody how tall Alan Napier was, because I can't believe it.
Alan was 6'9". Adam was 6'3", and they put 3-inch heels on him, so he'd be a lot taller than me. I was only 5'8", and I had no heels. And Julie Newmar is 6'2", and when she had her 4-inch heels on, she was like 6'6". I mean, these people were really tall. And when I would go out and make personal appearances, they would say to me, "I thought you were a lot smaller than that." And it's not that I was small, it's just that the other actors were so gigantic.
Now, speaking of the Bat computer, Bat radar scope, Rob Klein, tell us how you actually came to find the Bat computer that Bert and Adam used on the show.
Yes, I'd love to. Well, I have to say, start off, try not to be too long-winded about it, but when I started working in Hollywood, I very quickly realized that the studios did not keep the props and the costumes. They would get rid of them, and that was sort of a big shock to me. So the next thing was like, well, then where did it all go to? So I started playing detective to try to find all the stuff, and eventually I ended up working for the Disney Archives and Lucasfilm Archives. And I could say it's a lot easier to do something with Disney's assets or Lucasfilm's because they've copied what the Walt Disney Company did in 1970 because they were the first studio archive. So finding anything from Hollywood pre-70s is really quite amazing thing, and that's why the Hollywood Museum is so special because they have so much of that great material. So I went out on a quest to find where all the 60s Batman stuff was. And I literally would talk to crew members, or if I worked on a show, I would say, do you know any old Batman people? And they would say, oh yeah, you should talk to this guy or that guy. And that sort of led me to finding the Bat computers. They actually were with one of the guys that worked on Batman, but they had been out in the rain for 20 years. Wow. And this is absolutely true. And I said, well, do you want to get rid of them? He says, get a truck and get them out of here today, because had you come within the next week, they would have been dumpstered.
Wow.
So it was almost a kismet thing. And I had found the Bat computer proper and the Bat radar scope, which is downstairs. So that was a wonderful thing to find. I want to add one fascinating story. Most of the Batman hand props, the originals used on the show, actually do exist, and they actually are owned by one person who actually has most of the old school Hollywood stuff, very private collector. But this is what happened. There used to be a store up here on Vine, Hollywood and Vine, called Collector's Bookstore. Many people, I'm sure, might remember. It's gone now. But this particular industry collector was in Collector's Bookstore, and a grip who worked on Batman was coming into Collector's Bookstore and had a brown box, and in it were all the Batarangs, all the Bat gadgets, everything. And before the guy was able to approach the Collector's Bookstore counter and say, will you give me, something for this crap? And literally that's what it was thought of. This particular collector made a deal for that, and so the Batman stuff does still exist, but it's with a guy who's very reclusive and quiet. So that's the great news. The great news that exists, but unfortunately it wasn't able to come here. And then that's where these wonderful screen accurate, replicas came in. And having done several exhibits for Disney and Lucasfilm, this is the first exhibit of its kind that has been done like this. And for Danielle to be able to support something like this is amazing, and I hope we see many more things like that to come, especially for the shows that the assets don't exist from. So
when it was first installed, the Bat computer, Steve here at the museum, I said, hey, can you turn it on? He's like, well, I'm not sure if we're supposed to turn it on. I said, can you just please turn it on for me? He goes, okay. So when he turned it on, and there is the Batmobile, and there's Burt and Adam's original costume, and there's Yvonne Craig Batgirl, and there's the Batcycle. It was just like a dream for me, because I had watched this on TV, and now I'm standing in front of it, which was truly, for me, personally, just an amazing thing. So I want to thank you for however you got there, for getting the original Bat computer. Hearing today, now I'm hearing for the first time today how special it was to Burt and to Adam, so it just makes it even more special to me that you actually have it, and you refurbished it, and it works.
It's great bat bling for the Batmobile.
Yes.
So having that thing behind the Batmobile all lit up is pretty cool.
So we're forever indebted to all of you for that. I have a special message from someone who wanted to be here today and could not be here, but I'd like to read this message that she sent. It's from Julie Newmar, who starred as Catwoman. She said, hello to all you lovely Bat fans out there, especially you Cat fans. You know who you are. I will forever be grateful to my brother John for insisting that I accept the role of Catwoman. I had no idea what a deliciously villainous individual she could become, and I'm grateful to the extended family of colleagues, collectors, and cataholics that have kept her and myself, by extension, in the public's peripheral for all of these years. I wish I could have joined you today, but I know you will have a perfectly wonderful time with these brilliant people at one of my favorite places on earth, the Hollywood Museum. We owe a debt of gratitude to its founder, president, and Hollywood hero in her own rights, Danelle Dadigan, and it takes a villain to know a real hero. Bless you all, Julie Newmar. Now, the next question is to Alex Jolt, America's pianist. And Alex, I want you to tell everybody what you have in the exhibit and how you came about to become such a, because you're a lot younger than me, how you came about to be such a Batman fan, and how you, what put you on the road to say, hey, I want to recreate the Bat shields.
Sure. Well, early on, I became such a big fan. My brother, who was 10 years older, he took me to see the Tim Burton movies. And as a 9-year-old, it kind of really scared me. So I come home, and I see that there's this show called Batman, same title, and it's got all the colors and everything. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. And so it was a pure escape. And then while I'm watching the show, and there's more and more coming, more and more, and then I'm getting older, I'm realizing that, wait a minute, there's two levels. I love the action, the adventure, but then all the humor that was behind it. So I started, my mom is a wonderful seamstress, and so I asked her, Mom, can we try to make this? And my first cowl was out of paper mache that my art teacher in 6th grade helped me with, and we painted it. I didn't realize the technique behind it. And so that just started everything, and then we tried to refine it. My first time meeting Adam, Julie, and Frank Gorshin was in 1995 at the Congress Hotel. It was my birthday gift, and we went and I met my 23-year friend now, Wally Wingert, there, and we made a connection, and then he helped me with putting people in touch how to make the costumes better. He had such insight with them. And my favorite prop from the entire series was the bat shield, because I wondered, this giant thing, how do you put that in this little pouch? And it just came out like that. And then the fact of being a pianist, it uses piano hinges, so maybe that was a connection. But I love the artistry behind that bat shield, and you know, the paint job that's done with it. The other part to your question about what else is in the collection, this Wayne Manor phone is part of my collection. The replica Adam West Batman is down there. The batarang, the bat pouch that holds the batarang, and then the communicator buckle as well.
That's right. All right, let's give him a round of applause. Speaking of bat collectors, I already had known Ralph Garman, who is probably one of the top Batman collectors in the world. And Tracy and Bert said, hey, you need to call this guy named Wally Wingert, who's got a great Batman collection. And I said, what is a Wally Wingert? And so I called them, and I soon found out what a Wally Wingert was. Probably maybe the number 1 or number 2 Batman 66 collector in the world. So because of Wally, a lot of these guys that were, when I called them, because I called each one of these, because I was being led to each one, some by Wally, some by Bert, some by other people, say, hey, I know this guy, and he has this, and I would call him up, and this stranger would call up and say, hey, can you loan out your priceless items to this Batman exhibit? And by the way, I represent BURT WARD, and they were like, sure you do. So I said, well, Wally Wingert is giving, Wally's in? Then we're in. So we want to thank Wally Wingert for, I do anyway, for bringing me to all these sites. I appreciate it. Bert, my friend Bert. Have you all heard what happened to our good friend BURT WARD on the first 4 days of shooting the first episode of Batman? Who has not heard the story? Let me see your hands. Okay. Bert, would you please tell them what happened to you the first 4 days of the very first episode of Batman?
Well, actually, the show was a little more dangerous than I had expected. I didn't expect that kind of a problem. I remember for me, the first day, the first shot was coming out of the Bat Cave in the Batmobile, and had to be there early in the morning and in costume and makeup. And one of the assistant directors said, "Yep, go into that cave. It's Bronson Canyon, and get in the Batmobile, and we're gonna drive the Batmobile out, and it's gonna make a sharp turn. The sign's gonna go down, and we just want you to be in the shot." I thought, no big deal. So I went and got in the Batmobile. I looked over, and because it was dark in there, at first I didn't really realize that it wasn't Adam. But then, after a few moments, I realized that really doesn't look like Adam. There's something about him. So I said, "Well, who are you?" He said, "My name's Hubie." I said, "Okay, why are you here?" He says, "Well, I'm a stuntman, and this is a very dangerous stunt. The producers don't want Adam West to get hurt, so they paid me to do it." I said, "Oh, wow, really dangerous?" "Oh, yeah, we got to come out at about 55 miles an hour, got to make a sharp turn, left turn in front of the camera, the sign is going to go down." And I said, "Well, how dangerous can it be?" "Oh, listen, the more broken bones I get, the more money I get." So I thought, oh, okay. And then I started thinking, well, no, wait a minute. If it's dangerous for him, it's got to be dangerous for me. So I asked him, I said, well, wait a minute, do I have a stuntman? He said, yeah, you do. Oh, that's good. And I thought, wait a minute, why is he not here? You know, you're sort of like, you're in a costume, it's kind of hard to even think clearly. And he said, oh, well, no, he's over having coffee with Adam West. So I hear him say, okay, roll it up, they're going to start filming. I said, wait a minute. I think there's a terrible mistake here. And the second assistant director came over, his name was Ruben. I don't know if you remember Ruben. And he said, Bert, what's the problem? What's the problem? I said, well, this man's a stuntman. He tells me it's a dangerous shot. Yeah. And he tells me my stuntman is over having coffee with Adam West. Yeah. And why isn't he here instead of me? He said, we can't use him. You can't use him? No. What? Well, why not? Because he doesn't look like you. Now, you know, I wasn't too quick on my feet in that costume, but I did figure out, I said, well, wait a minute. Why would you hire a stuntman to be my stuntman if you couldn't use him? Well, because he doesn't look like you. Oh, well, and I didn't know what to do. So, long story short, roll it up. We came out at 55 miles an hour on the very first take. The stuntman was fantastic. He made that very sharp left turn, but the centrifugal force of going to the left, and I'm sitting in the right passenger seat, accidentally my door flew open. And when it flew open, it knocked the cameraman off of his little camera truck, knocked over an arc lamp, which is a really dangerous thing. Anybody under that would have been killed. And I was thrown towards the door, and I just instinctively put my hand out as though I was trying to reach for something. I luckily wrapped my little finger around the gear shift knob. And I held on, but it pulled it out of joint, which was incredibly painful. I never had anything happen like that. So they stopped, everybody ran over. They said, Bert, are you all right? I said, yes, but my hand is killing me. And even through the glove, it was like twice the size already. And they said, you've obviously pulled that finger out of joint. We got to get you to the hospital. I said, okay, well, where's the car I go to? Oh, well, we can't go now. I said, why is that? Well, we didn't get the shot. I said, they said, we got 80 guys on this crew. We got a big crew here. We got to get the shot. That was at 7:30 in the morning, and I left for the emergency hospital at noon. Wow. Okay, that was the first of 4 days in a row. And second day, coming out of there's a car that was on fire, supposed to be on fire. This was the Riddler, Frank Gorshin. I was supposedly in the show, had a mask done of my face and to create a life mask that was then to be worn by Jill St. John as a death mask to impersonate me so Batman would think that she was really me. But they had used me because they couldn't really make a mask that perfect. So I had to get down into this car underneath, and Frank Gorshin was on top, and then it was intentional, and it was done by this special effects guy. The car was put on fire, and supposedly not in any dangerous way. So Frank Gorshin came up, he got on the edge of the car, and on cue from Robert, jumped down onto the ground. I came up, and you gotta imagine, being in a car, which is a real car, and it's confined, and you're underneath somebody who is coming out of a window, and the car's on fire. And even though there wasn't burning fire around me, you could smell the smoke, you could feel the heat. It was intense. So I got up to jump out, and just before I jumped out, unexpectedly the car blew up. And I remember my face going right to it's like the ground was coming at my face just incredibly fast. 2nd-degree burns in the back of my neck, off to the hospital. Same doctor, by the way. He said, you're back. That was the second day, and I won't take too long, but the third day, again, now I'm tied down on a table, and this is when they had made that mask of me, and Batman is supposed to break through the subway building to rescue me. There's in a subway, and they had a magnesium charge, but they had, when you do a breakaway set, you build it with balsa wood. It's like a very flimsy, maybe some of you as kids used balsa wood, very light. It just comes apart with a magnesium charge that is very bright and very loud, but you know, not a big charge. Well, guess what? The people that built the set had failed to build a breakaway set. I mean, it was 2x4s. There's no time to spend 3 weeks to cut the set and make it weak so it would blow up. So the special effects guys, in their infinite wisdom, they used 2 half sticks of dynamite, and they nearly blew the soundstage down. That's when a 2x4 came down, tied down, landed on the bridge of my nose, broke my nose. You know? And I tell you, the only premonition I had, and I did have a premonition that day, was that as I'm tied down and these special effects guys are walking past me, you know, lighting, getting all the charges ready, I could smell liquor on their breath at 8 o'clock in the morning. That is a bad sign.
Wow. Robert.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the real Hollywood.
Yes. Are you enjoying this so far? Yes, all right.
Oh, I have one last one.
Right ahead.
I didn't know if there was enough time, but I want to tell you about day 4.
Your BURT Ward will make the time.
Day 4, I was told by the people, this is a $250,000 shot. Whatever you do, BURT, don't you mess it up. This was at 20th Century Fox. It was normally we would shoot at Des Eagle Culvert, and it was a scene outside where Batman had driven up to the Hollywood A Go-Go, or whatever the name of the club was. He went inside. I pulled the Batmobile up, and the Riddler, Frank Gorshin, came out of a manhole, but shot me with a dart and was going to steal the Batmobile, and which all of it occurred. And they had told me that, you know, when the Riddler is going to push the start button, there was actually a cover on the start button that said start button, but in reality, it was like an emergency thing, and flares were going to go up. And they said, look, Bert, there'll be all this fireworks. Whatever you do, don't you move. Don't you move. There's no way $250,000 shot that we're going to do this again. You cannot move no matter what. It's okay. I won't move. So everything went great. Robert did a fantastic directing job. The fireworks shot way up, way in the air. But guess what? They came down. And when they came down, I felt burning sensations through my hair, even through my gloves. It was hot where it landed, but on my bare skin, burnt right to the bone. Okay, burnt through my shorts. You can imagine the pain that was. And I did not move. I did not move. But you know, there it was, back to the hospital. And that's what the doctor said to me. I'm beginning to think you're accident prone. I said, no, I've never been in an emergency hospital till this week.
Wow.
But I will tell you this, one last thing. The studio was very smart. You got to give it to 20th Century Fox. They were so smart that after the end of the first week, they took out a very large life insurance policy. And I could swear, by the last few episodes of the series, 3 years later, they were trying to collect on their policy.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad they didn't collect on it. Now, you know, there's celebrities in Hollywood that are Batman. We're not just us regular folks who are Batman fans. There's a lot of celebrities who are Batman fans. We have 2 such celebrities with us today. And I want to introduce them to you, and they'll just stand and you can give them a great round of applause. The first one, I've known her for many years, and she is a Batman 66 fan. She's one of the stars of the CBS daytime drama The Young and the Restless, playing Esther Valentine for, I think, over 30 or 35 years? 36 years? Would you please welcome Kate Linder? And then the other celebrity that we have with us today that's just here to just, you know what I think is great? That stars come out to just listen to other people in our industry and to
This is Jesse
come
T
into something like
reporting
this, I
live
think
here
it's
from the
extra
Hollywood
special to
Museum
have
and the
those kind of
Batman
people with us
66
today.
exhibit
She
here.
is known to
BURT Ward's in the
millions
house and a lot
as
of
the girl that
Batman
you
people are
loved
here
to
too, plus
hate
a lot of the collectors.
on Little House on
This
the
has been a
Prairie.
terrific program so far.
And I can just
Could
tell
bring
you from
this
meeting
cool
her
stuff. I
multiple
remember Batman
times
growing up.
in real
Original
life, she's
Batman
one of the
and Robin.
sweetest people I've ever
So
met.
the,
So would you please welcome
MCs,
Nellie Olson
Saying
herself,
some of the stars.
Allison Armstrong.
This is excellent. And you can come down here and see the Batman exhibit
All right, now
any
back
time
to
of
the
the day.
panel.
So we're just
Kelly
kind of breaking in. Let's
DeCambre.
know this is Jesse T.
I want you to tell everybody the
Like
items that
AT&T
you have
on TV
in this
right
exhibit.
here.
And if you could just tell, how did
Of
you
course,
get
the brown beauties are on
involved?
duty.
Once you tell us what you have,
Back
how
to
did you get involved
the fun here.
with Batman
With
and doing what you
Batman
did,
and
creating
BURT
screen accurate replica costumes for the villains, and what drew you to the villains versus maybe Batman or Robin?
Well, it all began with an idea, with a phone call I got from Wally, selling me on the idea. And beforehand, I was doing a lot of research on a lot of the textiles and fabrics for costumes at the time. And I thought it was an interesting challenge to replicate rough and dirty fabrics that they used back in the day.
Step over your cord.
Including Frank Ocean's costume, which was forward cotton, and how it read on set. And that was the key, the lighting, how it hit the fabrics. And one is like, see what you can do, see what you can muster up, see what you can, and just give it some thought. I wasn't there yet with the idea because of work, and I had to get 4 balls in the air and try to figure all this out. Anyway, but before I go any further, guys, my introduction to Batman as a child started with a green boot and a clam. That was the first image I saw. I was 3 years old. I'll never forget it. On Zenith. A clam with a green foot twisting back and forth, and I'm like, what is that? And so Robin, that was when I was growing up. Robin was my to-go character to play in the house. That was like my mom would do the costume for me, and now in her 1977, Burt was doing a tour, and he was coming to my town, and my mom was like, "We got to get you to meet Burt," and I thought I was going to meet Burt as BURT WARD. Burt was in So Get Up, and that scared the Jesus out of me. I was in line with a bunch of kids just waiting. I had the paper, had the autograph, getting up there, and I'm like getting in line. I'm up to Burt. I'm like in line, and then it's like Burt goes hi, and the minute he puts his hand out with his green glove, it's like time just stopped, and I was like, thank you. Sorry. But man, I ran, I was like, Mom, got it, let's go, I'm good. So anyway, back to the costume. So I was still on the fence with the idea, and then I started mulling it around. I'm like, man, this would be really, really great. I'm a huge fan of Gorshin. And my buddy Bob, Mitch, Cesar Romero, we had other buddies in the field, Scott Sebring, Batman, and we all got together and we all started, coming up with an idea and doing research on different fabrics, and it started becoming a passion in a way to try to understand what looked the part before we started fabricating it. So it was a good 4 months into this to do research, all this stuff, to get the colors right, and the textures, and the tone, and the look. And then, when the costumes are created, then you start doing the fabrication for the body language. And we got to the part of the face. I'm like, it's all about the body language, to celebrate the body language and costumes. The actors have portrayed it wonderful, but let's give it an echo of what it was. And that was what got me on board, is to celebrate that idea instead of, say, the actor portraying the character. Right. So that took it up a notch. And it worked great. I mean, I started doing the heads with the face and then the
body language and everything.
So the Riddler, the Penguin, the Joker, and of course, I had to get Bookworm in there.
Awesome.
Huge fan of Bookworm. And I was on the fence of that one too. I'm like, where am I going to find that right? You know, that leather-bound material book, that book. And short story with the Bookworm. Bookworm wasn't going to happen until I found the right lamp. And I was in Santa Barbara, walking around, just having a great time with my girlfriend, and going through all these thrift stores, and at the corner of my eye, there's the lamp.
Wow.
Inspiration. Bought the lamp, and that began the growth of the Bookworm.
Wow.
So, on another note, and so we started doing the fabrication for the Bookworm and getting all the details in, and the costume was so lush, and all this detail and stuff, all these fringes and all this other good stuff that was going around it. And then we did the Riddler, and then Bob Mitch did the Joker, and I really wanted to get King Tut in there. Fortunately, didn't make it to the event, but as time went, got more flexibility in time between meeting these guys here and Wally, and two other artists that contributed to the King Tut project. We started weaving that idea together to get King Tut on the floor.
Awesome. Victor Buono, just looking at you right off the set of the show. I mean, that's really, when I look at the King Tut sculpture that's downstairs, it's just like he just walked off the set and he's just looking at you. It's fantastic. And luckily enough, when the decision was made to do King Tut, Danelle here at the museum happened to have a life mask of Victor Buono's face from the 70s from the Planet of the Apes. And that life mask was used, I think, in an incredible way to recreate Victor's face as King Tut from 1966 as the villain King Tut. So you guys did an awesome job. So let's give them a hand, folks.
Let me add some clarification. In the very beginning, when he started to speak, he talked about a green boot giant clam. So let me explain to you what that really was. In one of the episodes where Batman and I got into some trouble, I got eaten by a giant clam, and so it was actually fairly claustrophobic to be in that when it closed, you know, and because they decorated, set decorated just great and everything, and so what they did, and as he remembered properly, is that they didn't want to make people think that I had died. Okay, I'm still alive. That's why they said, you got to wiggle your foot so that they know you're still alive in there, right? But that was the context in which he remembered, and that's what apparently got him started.
That sticks out of my memory too. That episode, that always sticks out of my episode. And I would watch, because Batman was on, as you know, twice a week, and so the cliffhanger, which I think Batman probably. Robert, you guys probably actually created the cliffhanger for television because you would tune back in on the second episode to see, my gosh, that something's going to happen to Batman, or are they going to make it? You had to tune in to see, are they going to make it? So that was actually a brilliant move.
Well, also, if you think about it, that came out of, and Robert might be able to clarify it better than me, but the whole idea of the cliffhanger came out of the original films of Perils of Pauline or something like that, where they had that kind of a cliffhanger.
Awesome.
And a piece of trivia in the first show, which was actually pretty scary, something happened. I was on a buzz on to be cut in half of the buzzsaw, and the thing on Batman is they came really close to doing things that could be really dangerous, to be honest with you. So I really was on that conveyor belt, and there was a real buzzsaw going, and the real thing. And they said, "Don't worry, we've got this thing, and it will stop 18 inches from the saw." Well, that's still only this far from a real buzzsaw. Okay, I mean, big blade, Wow. And it was very unnerving, very, very unnerving, I must tell you. But what happened that they did, and Robert might recall it, is that this happened only in the first show, and then they didn't do anything like that. They put a dummy on,
after they took me off and actually buzzed the head in half.
Wow.
And I think that somehow, you know, somehow it got cut, you know what I mean? And I don't think it aired because they were too afraid that taking something that was really wonderfully entertaining and all of a sudden making it really deadly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I remember that happening. I don't know if Robert, you remember that or not?
I blocked it from my mind completely.
Good reason.
All right, now Pat Evans. Pat's been very integral to this exhibit. You know, things we putting together, and somebody would say, well, we need this. And then I think it might have been one or somebody would say, oh, Pat can do that. And I would look at Pat and go, Pat, there'd be any way you could do that? And he would say, yeah, sure, absolutely. He was always yes, so I'm so thankful that he was yes to a lot of things. Tell us what you have in the exhibit and the things that you helped put together that we see in the exhibit.
Sure. I got a lot of the screen accurate props I brought in. The oceanic bass sprays. That was actually the very first 66 prop I made, and that was really fun and special to me too, because that was one of the final things I got to do with my dad before he passed away. He was a craftsman.
Oh, wow.
I can fiddle and make things, you know. So, but this guy was a genius. So that was really special to me, and that ended up shortly after that I discovered the 66 message board, which Scott Sebring, who's another key player here in the 66 community, he runs it and was helpful in the exhibit. I started posting pictures of the props and stuff I was making, and that just sort of snowballed. And you know, you discover, hey, there's other crazy people in the world too that spend their time scouring eBay for these random, you know, vintage pieces from the '60s. You know, because as you guys know, they cobbled things together from like the bazooka that's in the exhibit is a real toy. Called the Mattel Sonic Blaster, and it was used for the bazooka and also for they used horror when I shot one of the Mr. Freeze episodes at the lineup, where they'd taken basically the same prop and just spray painted it blue for Mr. Freeze rather than for Batman. So actually the Sonic Blaster is a neat item too, because if you look on YouTube and see, it was the very first commercial that Kurt Russell ever did.
Wow.
We talk about a crazy toy. Basically, it had a bladder inside of it. You pumped it up, filled it with air, and then you could actually aim it at things and knock it over from like 15 feet away.
Wow.
How they avoided having some kid put it up to some other kid's head. But anyway, that and this particular item, which some of you guys might recognize, the Bat Megaphone. Show you the lengths that we go to as collectors and prop replicators. This represents probably about a 4-year search for the correct megaphone. Actually, from the time I thought of it, probably more like 6 or 7 years, because it took me about 3 years to actually track down the actual model of megaphone that it was.
Wow.
And it ended up being an Italian police megaphone. I was trying to get it ready for the initial exhibit, but I literally had been scouring eBay and anywhere else for it for, like I said, 3 or 4 years. Finally, on an Italian Craigslist ad, I found some kid who was just selling one, you know, locally, and it was about the time that the exhibit had been announced and everything. So I said, hey, this is going to sound nutty, but would you mail this to me in the U.S. if I paid you? He's like, yeah. I said, he's like, well, why? You know, so I explained to him the exhibit, and luckily there were some articles online about it, and he looked it up, like, oh, cool, sure, yeah. I didn't end up getting it done for the exhibit, but I do want to include it. Hopefully we can include it in the for the last month or so of the exhibit. But it actually was about yay long, and actually you cut the cone, and then this piece I think, if I'm not mistaken, you guys didn't have a dedicated prop team for Batman, right? It was probably just the studio prop guys, something like that, Mr. Butler?
Yeah. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That would originate with the prop master or in the prop department.
Right.
It was a very compartmentalized studio factory.
Right, right.
As they always are.
Right, right. But so it wasn't like now today where you've got 1,000 people just working on all the props for Batman movies and stuff like that. These guys were probably knocking them out pretty quickly, and so that's kind of what I really like about the props of the TV show versus like the props that they have like 1,000 guys working on. I mean, both are great, but these guys had to do stuff so quickly and so down and dirty, and they still made like the most memorable props. And they're like if you asked a 5-year-old kid to make you, a Batman gadget, they would come up with sharp repellent. You know what I mean? And so that's what really it was genius about them, because it really spoke to the kids that were like me.
Well, on the night of the opening of this exhibit, it was tons of media, invited guests, and I just referred to it as mayhem, but controlled mayhem. The sound system went out, and there was a Batman megaphone here, and that's how we did all the introductions. Was because some heinous villain did something to the sound system, but the Bat megaphone actually came to the rescue that night.
That's right. I'm really happy to finally. It doesn't quite work yet. Yeah, I put batteries in it and stuff, but.
I was going to add something to your megaphone there, as that's one of the reasons why a lot of the Batman stuff doesn't exist. They had the custom-made stuff like the batarangs, and then a lot of the things were found objects, like a megaphone like that with the custom bat piece. And the reason a lot of that stuff is gone is because after the show was canceled, they would pull the custom bat pieces off, and then it would just get thrown back in the prop department, and then things were just lost to time.
Well, your back. The Lost in Space guys did a lot of the Batman props.
A lot of the Batman stuff was also Lost in Space stuff, and somehow those guys got to it first, so some of the radars and stuff like that are actually on replica Jupiter 2s and all that. But
right. And I think actually one of Mr. Three's guns was...
that was a Lost in Space rifle, right. Yeah, so quite frankly, if you look at the value of this stuff, which is sort of secondary just to the history, but Batman stuff is far more valuable than Lost in Space stuff nowadays. So an incomplete Cesar Romero costume just went for $85,000 at Profiles, and that's a non-complete. And it's because of this exhibit, because somebody saw it and was, well, I have one of those, and Batman seems to put it up for auction, and $85,000 for an incomplete costume is pretty good.
Yeah. All right, now really quickly, thank you for that. Are you still enjoying it, guys? Questions from the audience, and I told you earlier that people are online watching a live stream. There's some Facebook or social media questions coming in also. We'll have a few minutes for that just in a couple of minutes. But I want to give you guys another chance to win a shirt. You want to win? Anybody want a shirt? So Bert, I think there was over 275 holy sayings that Robin did. And I want you to tell me, I need somebody to tell me, just raise your hand if you think you have the answer, if this was really a holy saying that Bert as Robin used on the phone. Holy hole in a donut.
Yes.
Yeah. Who said yes? That's correct. It
yes.
was. He did the t-shirt. Saying that?
Yes, of course.
Of course, okay. Now, we're so happy to have with us today Donna Lauren. She played Susan the Cheerleader. Now, by the way, Donna and Bert, did she give you your first on-screen kiss?
Yes.
She did, okay.
And I think first and only.
The only time Robin was kissed on the shore, as Dick Grayson, right?
Yes.
She kissed you as Dick
Undercover agent.
That's right, I remember that episode. He was very cool. And Donna was Susie the Cheerleader. She's one of the Joker's moms on the show. She has, in fact, after we're finished here downstairs on the exhibit floor, Bert will be having some autograph signing, and Donna will be doing a book signing, and Alex Jolt will be taking orders if you feel so inclined. to have a bat shield made for you. So that'll happen downstairs right after. So as soon as we're finished here, they're going to go downstairs, and if everybody can just stay cool until we get them out of here, then you can all come on down. Where was I? Donna, tell us about, is there a memory that sticks out for you from the show, from that episode that you did, or being on the show? Is something that stayed with you all these years? And since Batman was such an incredible series, it's still around today, what's that meant to your life as the years have rolled by?
I would say one of the most memorable moments was being introduced to Cesar Romero in full costume and makeup. On the set, he never really showed himself in streetwear.
Wow.
He always came out of his dressing room fully prepared. I still think he's the finest Joker. His laugh was chilling. When I was doing a scene with him in a truck when Batman and Robin were being hauled off, I was sitting next to him, but between us was a little green lunchbox. And I saw him carting it around, and I didn't know what it was. But in between takes, he opened the lunchbox, and it was an oxygen tank, a little oxygen inhaler. Yeah, so that kind of explains the texture of his voice with that gravelly laugh of his. He had some breathing difficulties, so he took up his oxygen, and off he was for the next.
Now, were the days long on the set of Batman, Don? In your particular episode that you did, was it a long shoot day, or how many days did it take you to shoot an episode?
Well, I was on a 2-part, so it was 10 days.
10 days. And how long was a normal day for you on the set?
Well, you always start at dawn, and it's usually from dawn to dark, and when it's dark, who knows?
Not so glamorous, huh?
But the first day I arrived, because I was one of the first episodes, I think I was the fourth, but I can't prove that. I remember my dad, who was my manager, drove me up to the lot at Desilu, and there were people. Let me just step back. I had just come from doing a rock and roll live show from ABC called Shindig, and there were fans, teenage fans that loved rock and roll live performance. And so, at ABC, at Prospect and Talmadge, there were always fans kind of trying to get in.
Wow.
So here we are, driving into the Desilu lot, and there are teenagers trying to climb over the chain link fence to get into the lot, which prepared me for the idea that this was something great and very special, which obviously it is. And I have a little 5-year-old grandson who adores Batman. So.
That is awesome. Now, she drove all the way in from Palm Springs to be with us. Okay, you want to change for a t-shirt. This is my last bat trivia. What flavors of Frosty Freezies was Mr. Freeze going to turn the dynamic duo into? What flavor for Batman and what flavor for Robin? Anybody know? Anybody think you know? No? Okay. Batman was pineapple and Robin was lime.
I would have gotten half of that.
Now, Jim Ojala,
Did I say it right? Yes.
thank you. Jim Ojala is the special effects artist that created the King Tut sculpture with the face, and he's also doing Batman, Robin, and Batgirl for a new exhibit, a permanent exhibit that will be coming to the Hollywood Museum later this year. But tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I was talking with Janelle and guest curator Wally Wingert about doing a King Tut statue that Kelly wanted to do, which would be incredible. He had a wonderful screen-accurate costume that he'd done heavy restoration on, but you don't want to do it unless you really have Victor Buono's face. which we scoured the internet, doesn't exist. You can't get a light cast of it. But then it was like, wait a minute. I recall in the Hollywood Museum seeing the Beneath the Planet of the Apes exhibit. There's basically displays of Victor Buono's makeups from that film. And I bet you, if we take off those prosthetics off that form, maybe there's his head cast underneath. So we carefully took the prosthetics off, and sure enough, it's this super rare head cast of Victor Buono from Beneath the Planet of the Apes, only 4 years after Batman and Robin. So we brought it back to my effects studio, and we basically cast his head, and then replicated it in clay, opened his eyes up, and made a mold of that, and then we made a fiberglass head of him, and then gave it to Kelly, which he put it together with the statue and painted it and put the eyes in, and we have this amazing King Tut on display now.
I made him some good-looking hair too.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
And then we did a similar thing with the upcoming exhibit of the World's Finest with the Christopher Reeve Superman, where we got a hold of a face cast of Christopher Reeve from Superman that was used for flying dummies to replicate Superman. And we basically did a new cast of that and made a statue of that that looks beautiful and will be coming soon to the Hollywood Museum.
Absolutely. Let's give Jim a great round of applause. This is Bob Mitch, and we're going to go to questions in 2 seconds, but I wanted you guys to meet Bob Mitch. Now, out of all the collectors for the Batman 66 exhibit, the hardest guy to reach on the planet was Bob Mitch. But we finally got to him, and I was so happy that we did. I want you to tell everybody what you have in the exhibit and how you became, again, it seems like you were drawn to the villains also, so tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, I did the Joker costume, 100% screen accurate replica, and I was introduced to Batman as a kid. Like many of the other panelists here, I watched it in reruns in the 80s. My dad was a big comic book fan and got me into it. And yeah, I always really liked the villains. Riddler and Joker were my top 2 favorites. And I guess I just was always drawn to almost the period look of the Joker. I like the top coat and the waistcoat and everything. And I just dove into it about, I'd say, 4 years ago with the help of Wally Wingert and Scott Sebring. They gave me great reference material. And Wally put me in with some of the hidden secrets that the costume designer Jan Kemp had put into it, like how they had put ribbons over the pants instead of actually like printed pants for the stripes. Just little things like that that kind of like sell it and really make it really interesting. So yeah, I think the hardest part was actually dyeing the gloves to match the wool I got for the costume. I only had 2 pairs of gloves my first try, and it was a bit nerve-wracking to get that right. I mean, yes, you can always buy more gloves, but you don't want to go through like dozens and dozens. And amazingly, first try, just boom, put it right next, and it read just like perfect. So I was very, very pleased with how that came out.
Yeah, I'd say all these collectors, not being able to see the actual costumes, and they recreated these costumes that are screen accurate. So when you're watching the show, what you're seeing on screen is what you see in the exhibit with these costumes. So I think is an amazing feat that they were all able to do, because it doesn't always work that way. So thank you, and thank all of you guys. Yes? Of mine. Now we have some questions. We're going to take a few minutes to do questions here. Let's start off with a question from people that are watching on live stream on social media.
All right, if you could repeat it.
Grab the mic.
Keith wants to know, did Bruce Lee get his start on Batman?
Bert?
Bruce Lee and I lived in the same condominium complex. The apartment was called Barrington Plaza. And we were friends. And actually, his wife Linda, and at the time Brandon was 6 months of age, and we would go down to the Chinatown, and of course, him having lived in Hong Kong for 10 years, knew all the most authentic foods to order that weren't on the menu. But I used to spar with Bruce Lee, and at the time was brown belt karate, and he trained 8 hours a day. I can tell you one thing, a piece of trivia is, you know, he obviously became the most famous martial artist, film martial artist in the world. May always be that way. But piece of trivia is that Bruce Lee's first film fight scene of his career was fighting me on Batman. Wow. So,
going to a Chinese restaurant in downtown Los Angeles and seeing Robin and Kato having dinner together.
We weren't wearing our costumes.
That's true. Dick Grayson.
Right.
Danelle.
So at this moment, I really want to thank everybody here because, you know, as we're talking about this and the excitement of the Batman TV show and having Robin right here next to me, you know, I always think to myself, how many people knew that this TV show was really a mid-season replacement? And there wasn't really much other than it was just going to take up some time. Who knew it was going to turn into this? I mean, 52 years later. And I always think about the costume designer, Jan Kemp, who several of you mentioned. What would he have thought? Here's this British designer. What would he have thought all these years later, everyone striving to try to find his original costumes, which, as we all know, in fact, we had this discussion earlier about was Western costume, who had a few of them and then decided to shred them or turn them into other costumes because they were more popular. And this is what always happened. In fact, that's why studios call their costumes and props assets. But of course, now we collect them. But decades ago, that wasn't the case. So I just want to thank you all for sharing in this excitement because who knew it was going to be this way 52 years ago?
Absolutely. Now we have a couple of minutes left. If anybody here, Harlan, you'll help me. Anybody here have a question for the panel? Yes, this young man right here.
What was it like being Robin?
But let me bring the microphone to you so everybody can hear the question.
What was it like being Robin?
Well, for the most part, it was a lot of fun. I mean, who wouldn't want to ride in the Batmobile, fight heinous villains, climb walls, all for good things. You know, we had so many great dialogue lines. I recall one session, one scene where Frank Gorshin in one of his Riddler episodes, we were up on a high balcony and he actually pushed me off the balcony and I could have fallen to my death. Batman was on the roof, pulled out his batarang and threw his batarang down. And I caught it in my teeth, okay, in the show. And he pulled me all the way up several stories to the very top of the roof with me holding on to the batarang in my teeth, you know. And I think I had a line, "Holy hygiene, Batman."
Yeah! Woo!
Of course, Adam in his very dignified, you know, Batman style, you know, told me, you know, reminded me of the importance of good dental health.
Yeah. Yep.
There's always those kinds of things, and for kids, they took it really seriously. For the adults, it was the nostalgia of the comic book, but for the teenagers and college kids, who at that time in our history didn't want to be inside watching television. That was when everybody was out cruising around on Friday nights and it's things like that, and they normally would never watch television, and the networks couldn't get them as you know. But Batman pulled them in because of this kind of campy style humor, some of the double meanings we had, suggestive situations, and we had a very special interplay between Adam and I, special chemistry. And I think that part of the reason our show was so successful is that we were allowed to have that chemistry instead of being directed, say, well, no, say your line this way, no, you got to do this. You know, and I think I have to thank, of course, Robert Butler for allowing me to be Robin as I envisioned it. But also, there was something kind of interesting going on. They had so many special effects, and that everybody was panicking to get these special effects working in every show. It wasn't just one. It's all these different things, and this wouldn't work, and that wouldn't work. And so basically, Adam and I, other than being told, well, now, you know, you do this, and you cross here, and you do that, but when it came to the relationship
we were allowed to do this. And I remember when I first met Adam before the screen test, I actually screen tested with Adam. And when you consider that there were more than 1,100 young actors that were interviewed for the part of Robin, over 1,100. The uniqueness of just Adam and I screen testing together was pretty special. But I remember before the screen test, I was introduced to him, and I sat down next to him, and we started to talk for a few minutes, and within 5 minutes, the two of us were laughing.
Wow.
We had an almost instant chemistry, and it's never stopped. All those years, the minute you put Adam and I together, sometimes we would go out on the weekends, even though we're shooting long hours, we'd go play tennis on the weekends. And people would come out to these public courts and kind of look. You know, it's like something looks familiar to them. And all of a sudden somebody would say, "Oh my God, that's Batman and Robin playing tennis!" You know? And but we had this very special chemistry, and I believe in my heart that, you know, all the great comedy duos, it seems to me, in the past, your Laurel and Hardy, Abbott and Costello, even, you know,
Spencer Tracy and Catherine Hepburn.
yeah, and all the great ones, you know what I mean? They all had a contrast, you know, very big contrast between one and the other. Right. And it was that contrast. So whereas Adam as Batman was very, very slow speaking, which at first I thought, I don't know why he's doing it. And then I figured it out. He was actually very smart, Robert. He knew that a 30-minute television show had 22 minutes of filming and 8 minutes of commercial, and the more he talked, and the slower he talked in that 22 minutes, the more the camera was on him. And the less that it was on everybody else.
Yep.
And I don't know if Robert recalls that, but so many times when I'm working with Adam and there's a two-shot, meaning both of you are supposed to be in the shot, you know, you're both in the camera, you're talking with each other, he would turn and just walk into the camera. And of course, with that big cape and big guy, he'd fill the whole screen. And many of the directors said, "Wait a minute, Adam, you can't do that. This is a two-shot." Oh, he said, "I had to do it." Well, why, Adam, did you have to? Well, because I felt the moment. It was something that the character had to do. And some of the directors, not Robert, but some of them were kind of intimidated because at the point that we became such a successful series, they didn't want to upset the actor that, you know, and force him to do something that wasn't in character and all of this kind of. So for the most part, Adam got away with it. And then I figured out what to do in defense. When he would do that, I'd come under his cape up in front of him, between me and the camera, you know, and he of course, he'd cry foul. You know, that's not right, Bert. You should never have done that. You know, but we had a very wonderful relationship, and I really believe in my heart that part of the success of Batman, in addition to the great directing and the great color and the great costumes and the great, you know, the music and the whap, zap, pow, and all that kind of stuff, that was a chemistry of two people that really connected, and you really felt you were, you know, it was happening. We sort of thought of it this way. We weren't just actors doing something, and an audience was kind of watching, you know, just like in a movie where they're not part of it. We really tried to reach through the screen in our own way and connect with the people out there. And we used to say that we put on our tights to put on the world, okay? And it was that style, and I don't think the public had ever seen anything where you were taunted. The audience was taunted, and it all of a sudden made them think, wait a minute, are you serious or what, you know? And I think that's part of our success.
How about it, guys? I believe 90 minutes has put by so very fast, and I want to thank everybody for coming. Oh yeah, okay, we can do one more question. This is it right here. Yes, Robert, I'm sorry.
I want to throw a rose back at Bert. Remove this articulate, calm, sensible, mature gentleman. Remove him from your mind and go with me to a couple of early moments on the show. The associate producer said, "We got this kid, he's a great gymnast, but we're not sure meet him and talk to him and see what you think. Okay, I will. We met. He was 15, looking 13, 14, whatever, I guess. He had never been on a casting call before in his life. He had never shot a test before. He was even greener than I was as a young director. But what he brought was an innocence, an enthusiasm, a lack of self-consciousness, good intellect, a spirit of fun, great athletic ability. What he did was him, it wasn't me. Sure, walk here, wait until he crosses before you sit. Sure, that stuff. But the spirit, the eagerness, the enthusiasm, and the bright eyes that could dim your whole soul, was what he was as an innocent. And what he was with Adam was the bright innocent. If you have a good script, you have a show. If you have a good villain, you have Batman. At the top of that pile are Adam and Burt as the sage and the innocent, the brilliant innocent. That's great pairing in storytelling, to get the sage and the innocent together. And then the fact that they hit it off together and could work together is due to both of them. But what Burt did was largely what Burt did, and not what your young director did. He deserves immense credit, truly.
Thank you.
Okay, hi, my question is for Burt. Burt, I was just wondering, who was your favorite villain on the show? Who did you enjoy working with the most?
I love working with everyone, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Robert was right. I was the kid in the candy store. I'd never done anything. Every one of these villains was somebody that I had either grown up watching on television or seen in a movie. I mean, when I met Frank Gorshin, and I met Cesar Romero, and you know, everybody on that set was fantastic. I mean, Vincent Price, I remember when he came on the set, I remember seeing The Raven, and I was like scared. You know, I was scared to meet him, and yet he was very nice. There is an interesting story because he played Egghead, and at the end of his episode, there was a huge egg fight. Okay, and I don't know if any of you know the story, but he and Adam pulled a little joke on me because in the last scene where Batman's supposed to rescue Robin, they had some dialogue, but before the dialogue, Vincent Price was supposed to break 3 eggs over my head. Real eggs, by the way, okay? And it didn't really hurt, but they kept messing up the scene. And time after time, I had something like 15 or 16 eggs broken on my head. And by that time, I was starting to get a little dizzy. And I can just tell you that from my experience, I remember I was supposed to pick up a half a dozen eggs and throw it at Vincent. But I was so upset at this time, and again, being a neophyte actor, I just sort of did what I wanted to do. I picked up a whole dozen eggs, and I went over and I smashed them on the top of his head, and it made his egg move. For the rest of that scene, his egg was all we couldn't spend 3 hours getting that egg right. And so that was, but for me, every one of them was great. I mean, Shelley Winters, I mean, there's so many great, Art Carney, Minstrel, Joan Collins, Burgess Meredith, Penguin, Julie Newmar. I mean, all of these were great, wonderful people. And the one thing that also impressed me about Robert Butler is that everyone was a consummate professional. It was none of this finding your way. I mean, everyone that came in, they knew their lines, they knew their stuff. It was like, I mean, they're like a master surgeon when they did their work. Everything was precise. They could say, the director could say, give me 3% more, and they could give you 3% more. That's the kind of ability
and they pick the best, in my opinion. When I mean this, Robert, I've worked with I don't know how many directors on 120 episodes, but none of them, in my opinion, had the precision and the thoughtfulness and let's make this the best it can be instead of let's just knock it out, you know, and as he did. And that's why I believe he was hired. And so for me, to work with the best, I was spoiled after that.
Malachi, stand up really quick. This is Malachi, and when you look at the exhibit and you see Mr. Freeze's gun, he's the one that recreated the screen accurate replica of Mr. Freeze's gun, so thank you for doing that. I want to thank everybody for being here today. Now, everybody, if you could just stay right where you're at, we have to get a photo for... Yes. We gotta bring a few more people up for the photo. You guys can just stay for 1 second. Then when that's done, Bert and Donna are going to go downstairs.
Okay, so what we're going to be doing, we're going to be going
is,
downstairs in a
and
second and
Alex
take a
Schultz,
photo
and they'll be there. You can ask more questions. And Bert will be
grab
doing
some
an autograph
photos here,
signing if
and
you
we'll
want
talk
to
to
buy an
David
autograph with him. A
live from the
picture. He's
Hollywood
got
Museum.
Robin pictures with
It's
him.
her
And then
Batman
Donna has
exhibit.
her book
I'll be
here
back
that
with
she's
you
doing a book
on
signing. So if you want to buy a book,